It's a great and exciting evening with all of you. Thank you very much for the abundance of love and affection that you've shown by participating in this webinar. I really appreciate it, and the next 40 minutes I'm sure is going to elevate your thought process about the key changes in payroll. Of course, there is only very little time that we are going to spend on the transactional items such as Provident Fund and ESI and all of that. We spend very little on that because that kind of information is readily available. But if you have questions, I'm free to answer. But we will definitely spend a lot more time on certain strategic items also, which I will take this time to let you all know. So this is going to be our agenda that we are going to speak about today. One is going to be staying relevant with payheads, where we'll talk about what changes have happened and certain incorrect things that we have unknowingly practiced or continue to practice even today. So we'll spend some time on that. We'll also spend some time on adoption of upcoming labor reforms that were supposed to happen in 2020. But a couple of them are happening now, and then a majority of them are going to happen in 2021. We will also talk about the faster transition to fixed term employment. So this is not contract, this is just going to be a fixed term employment. So these are the three transactional items that we will talk today. And quickly, we'll spend some time on rebadging on scale. We will spend some time on micro analysis at macro level. And we will also spend some time on long-term investments in HR and payroll technology. Just a couple of minutes, if not more. So that's what we are going to do. And I'm going to take about 40 minutes. I'm going to start my timer right now because many times, my team tells me that you are very bad at keeping time. You just keep speaking and speaking. So I'm going to set that watch for 40 minutes. And we'll spend about 20-25 minutes for questions, my friends. Now, what is very important is that we need to have a lot of interaction. The old world is where we learned from the speaker. The new world is where we learn from each other. So the more number of questions you have, the happier we will be there. I have Radha, whom you met a couple of slides ago. And I also have Naveen and a couple of other team members who will assist me in taking your questions, because obviously I cannot answer all of the questions. So they'll help me take some questions, and certain notable questions Radha will address to the forum. So with that, let's quickly move on. So the first thing that I want to ask all of you is, how are you all doing? You have three options. Option number one is safe and sound with, of course, there was a lot of sound, but not that sound. Safe and sound with lots of work is option one. Option two is cooking or babysitting. Option three is going crazy, right? It's COVID time. We have too much of work, just like the beautiful lady here on the picture, but we may not be as smiling as her. And option four is all of the above. Please use your chat screens to provide your options. I would love to see your responses on your chat screens. Option one is safe and sound. Option two is cooking. Option three is going crazy. And option four is all of the above. So let's see. Radha, will you help me with the responses as and how they come? We want to see how it is. More of one, more of two, more of three, or more of four. And, the current situation has changed a lot of variables in our life. And this is a new way of reaching out to people, and there is definitely a way of how you should be able to interact with me. So please use the chat box. You can. So there are four, is it? Most of them are four. So a bit of a bit of everything. I think a mix. Going crazy, cooking, babysitting. Safe and sound with lots of work. I'm sure you're safe, otherwise you wouldn't be attending this webinar. It would be a record for somebody in quarantine to attend this webinar, I guess. But that's really nice to hear. So same thing here. I was going crazy a couple of minutes ago with all the noises and all of that. But yes, nice talking to you and nice interacting with you on this first question. So this is going to be the new normal. I don't think, in my honest opinion, I was talking to a very senior lawyer today morning, based out of Delhi. She does some Supreme Court labor law cases, and while talking to her, we did agree that the situation is not going to be easily resolved, probably at least until next 6 or 7 months. And we are going to need to accept that this is going to be our new normal, and a lot of things in our life are going to change. But I'm very glad that all of you are safe. My sincere, heartfelt wishes that you remain to be that way. And with that introduction, let's look at what COVID-19 or this year in general, 2020 in general, has actually to say about changes in payroll. So the first item on our list, my friends, is staying relevant with the pay heads, right? So 2019 you saw introduction of 2020. In fact, you saw introduction of the new tax regime. 2019, 2018, and 2017. All of these 3 years have had significant changes in the Finance Act, and thereby affecting the payroll taxation aspect. We did a quick study. About 52% of companies responded that they hadn't been able to upgrade or update their payroll, pay heads or salary heads, what we can call as. So let's, it is very important that we stay relevant, because otherwise we are unnecessarily going to be facing increased complexity. We'll be facing penalties and fines, non-compliance, and impact on company brand as well, which is today one of the very important things, one of the things that many companies look out for. Small, big does not matter, but companies want to retain the good brand or the goodwill of the brand that they want. So it's very essential that we look at these aspects which are no longer relevant. Conveyance allowance, medical allowance has been taken off, I think, about 2 years ago. And city compensatory allowance also has no relevance in terms of pay heads. In fact, replacing conveyance and medical is what we now have a standard deduction for 50,000 totally. And we also, a lot of companies have petrol and fuel allowance, which of course in COVID times they are not relevant, but even otherwise in compliance with the act, in compliance with the law, there is no such thing as petrol or fuel allowance that comes. Yes, in case the employee takes up a kind of travel on behalf of the company, a part of it, that expense can be reimbursed. But petrol and fuel allowance is like 5 and 10 years old, so you should definitely not have these pay heads at all. There are certain during our survey of about I think the survey had about 300 companies who had participated, and we also saw that a lot of incorrect tax exemptions are also there. For example, leave travel allowance has a maximum ceiling limit. It has to be 10%, right? It cannot exceed that value. And then there are regulations regarding the block of the years and all of that. But a lot of companies, either because of lack of awareness or because of lack of process controls, miss out on these aspects and end up paying huge fines and penalties when they are assessed by the income tax department. So that's something which is very important. I think many of you may belong to the manufacturing sector, and if that is the case, and if you already have a canteen in-house, then food coupons are not something that we should be providing, because they are essentially meant for those employees who don't have who have to spend separately for eating while on duty. So that's something which needs to be corrected if it is incorrect in your company. Car expenses, in a case where the car is a non-leased car and it is used for both personal and official purposes. So that's also incorrect. Driver perquisites for non-leased cars cannot be provided. It is only limited to, I think, about 900 rupees. That's the maximum limit for driver perks. Professional development allowance, we have seen a lot of PDAs coming up in even large company pay slips, whereas if PDAs are given across the board for all employees, that's not going to help as well, because that's non-compliance in the act of the income tax. I mean, in the eyes of the Income Tax Act. Employer provident fund contribution in excess of 12% will again attract TDS, sorry, taxes, income tax. So that's also certain tax exemptions that we felt were non-relevant. And here we have employer NPS contribution in excess of 10%. And very recently you saw, you saw that provident fund and superannuation together, these both retirement benefits together should not exceed, I mean, if they exceed 7.5 lakhs, they will be charged to tax. The excess value will be charged to tax. So that's also certain things that we should get right, while we are doing all of these work from home, or trying to update our pay structures, trying to reevaluate costs and all of that, because the last thing that you really want at this point in time, when we have challenges in economy, when we have challenges in revenue, challenges in sales, the last thing that we really want is spending towards fines or penalties, right? So just make a note of all of this. There are certain incorrect statutory deductions. There are so many times, so many people, so many forums, and so much of information is there regarding the treatment of the PF wage for provident fund, right? But many times, lot of companies still get it wrong. So we have only two options. Either company-wide you do a 12% on basic, right? Or if you are going to limit it, then it has to be 12% on the PF wage, not on the basic, right? So, please listen very carefully. It is going to be 12% on the PF wage and not on the basic, or, limited to 15,000 rupees, whatever it is. And we also see that, both sides we had about 12% deduction, employer side and employee side, but recently it was changed. An option was given for employers to reduce their contribution to 10%, right? So this 10% from the employer, which again has got over, that particular facility was available only until July. So I think from August onwards, you should reset back to 12% if you have decided to avail this particular provision. Of course, ESI, we all should be aware that it is on monthly gross. So if you have anything that is not mapped properly, I think this is the time that you should take to correct it. Yeah, so there is some green somewhere. So in COVID times, a lot of companies, because of the business requirement, are increasing their reimbursements towards broadband or mobile. A fair value, again, not like 10,000 and 15,000 and 20,000. That's not possible. A fair value is being provided as reimbursement. So this is outside of the purview of payroll, right? So it has to be a reimbursement for it to be non-taxable in terms of broadband and in terms of mobile, because internet is essential for internet as well as communications. Both are essential for undertaking their duties. So that's also something that we should know. The next thing that we should talk about is the adoption of upcoming labor reforms, right? So one thing which is very interesting in India is we have so many acts. You can see that there are about 1,536 acts, both state and central, both put together. There are 1,536 acts, and about 69,233 compliances that have to be done. Of course, this is not only labor. These are the whole, right, the whole compliance and act landscape together. But in labor alone, we can see that we have about 40 state acts and 423 central acts. Sorry, 40 central acts and 423 state acts. So that's just too much for us to do. Of course, not every act is applicable for every individual or every company. That's not the case, but still, it is a significant amount of work to do. Can you see on the screen the number of filings or intimations that have to happen? I mean, 135 central filings and 2,913 state filings. that's one of the reason why India is still ranking at 63 on the ease of doing business index, right? So I think that's a bit of distinction that we have to understand. And if you think, my friends, that all of these labor reforms, all of these central acts and state acts are going to go, all of these filings, 135 and 2,913 filings are going to go away. I'm sorry, I have to correct you. That is not going to happen. That is not the case. We will have central and state acts. Probably the number of filings that we have to do will reduce to a bit. So there will be simplification to a certain extent. We will move from a reporting function to a compliance function. Right now, you know what? A majority of the HR labor acts that we comply are more for reporting that we have complied, right? So that's the approach that we are taking. But I think with the new reforms coming up, that approach will no longer be relevant. We will have to look at compliance, look at the labor laws more as a compliance function than as a reporting function. I know a lot of you HR guys out there, will agree with me that this is many times this is the last priority item for top management and for leaders. But that has to change, my friends, because the upcoming labor reforms, though everything is condensed into one particular act, it's going to be quite difficult if we continue to use it as a reporting function. The third thing that we should definitely do during these times is undertake automation for reporting. So one of the challenge that we have, which is very persistent, which is very, very prevalent in companies of all sizes, whether you have 30 employees or 30,000 employees, it does not matter. But we have, we use too much of Excel for everything, right? And that does not allow us to automate the reporting function or the reports. And the data sits at so many disconnected places that it becomes all the lot more difficult to comply on a consistent basis. So that's very important, automation for reporting. We need to start looking at labor reforms with empathy and gratitude. I was talking to another very good I can say godfather in the HR space. So to him a couple of days ago, and we both were talking about how it is so difficult to find real IR people, industrial relationship people. Yeah, we have the generalists, we have the HR generalists, we have the payroll guys, we have the compliance guys, we have talent acquisition guys, and all of them. On one end, and on the other end we have all the lawyers, the ones who interpret the law, the labor law. They tell us how we should fire, they tell us how to draft a letter with what section 26 of subsection 3 of A of B, and they give us a beautiful letter which we can then issue to the employee or the blue collar worker in case we are not satisfied with his activities. But the real depth of human resource people is actually to be human. And when we want to be human, it is necessary that we show empathy and we show gratitude. Yes, today's managements are not accepting what we propose many times, not all the times, but the proposals are not getting accepted, they are getting shot down. But I think we should continue to do our human element, and if we lose that, we are going to lose a lot on the plate. We also need to focus on proactive response than on legal response. I think that is also equally important. I just tried to cover that, and we need to engage in a dialogue than directly with the law. So though we have all the terms and conditions and if, then, but, else, HR policies, employee handbooks, everything of those are there, still they are humans, and they need a bit of human support once in a while. yes, we have repetitive cases, repetitive people who keep doing the wrong things again and again. But generally speaking, that's something that we lack. And given that a lot more millennials are joining the workforce, millennials are these people who have born after 1990s or 1995s, those kind of guys. It's really not easy to control them. The last thing that you really want is to control them, right? You give them some freedom within certain parameters, and they will be a lot more productive than trying to control those kind of the millennials. It's the knowledge age, not the information age, right? So I think that's important. And some of the key things that I wanted to cover with these upcoming labor reforms. Of course, gratuity. I think a revision, a proposal has already been come about changing the gratuity norms. That is currently the norm is that we pay after 5 years, and now the norm could be that we need to pay them within 1 year itself. So we don't have to wait for 5 years for payment of gratuity. Now, the interesting aspects here is not only that our indirect costs. See, gratuity is an indirect cost, right? Either companies make gratuity payments outside directly from their P&L and balance sheet, or what they do is they have a gratuity trust or a gratuity policy, and they pay out from such policy and a gratuity policy. So for both of these options, there is going to be a significant rise in the cost, right? Because you will see that in gratuity, you will see that about 44% of attrition happens between the second year and the fifth year. 44% of attrition happens between second year and the fifth year. So which actually means that a majority of people are going to, sorry about that, which actually means that a majority of people are going to, if the past trend continues, 44% of people leave between second year and the fifth year. So that is going to increase our gratuity payout significantly. So those companies who don't have an insurance policy for gratuity, who don't do this, yearly, they have a technical word for it. What is it called? Actuarial valuation, right? So if you guys don't do the actuarial, you don't have and if you don't have an insurance company to support you, it's definitely going to be very difficult to keep. Hey, are we all muted, please? Yeah.
It is Arog Das.
I think the moderator can mute everyone. Some of the sounds are coming.
Okay, I'm just trying to, let me see if I can mute. Yes, so I think...
Mr. Akash, I tried several times, still people are trying to open and they muddling everything.
I understand, sir. I understand. I think we have to stick with the challenge.
In fact, one by one, I am checking every frequently, but still they are opening, going and coming back.
Okay. I really appreciate your additional support, but thank you very much for that. It's fine. Let's
please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So those are the challenges that we will see. Upcoming challenges with respect to gratuity. It is very important that if you don't have a gratuity trust, and if you have more than 100 employees, it is very important that you engage an insurance service provider. Otherwise, your gratuity outflows are going to shoot through the roof, right? And particularly those mid-sized employees where there is a lot of movement that happens. Not only in the large companies, a lot of movement actually happens with mid-sized companies between 25 employees up to about 750 employees. These are the size of the companies where you really have to watch out. And if you don't have a gratuity policy, I think you shouldn't delay it any further. Otherwise, it is going to bite bite our payroll costs directly as well as indirectly very high, right? Now, you know that in 2019 December, code on wages draft rules and regulations were proposed, and they were supposed to be introduced in 2020, but we are still awaiting the official date by which they will actually be implemented, and they will come into force. Actually, the act has already come. We want to know by when they'll come into force. But generally, these are the 4 things that are very important that we need to know on the code of wages. There is absolutely zero tolerance of discrimination, right? And the code of wages actually holds the directors of the organization responsible for discriminating employees. So this has to be a top-down approach. Otherwise, we are going to have a lot of trouble with the senior management. And they have specifically mentioned our third gender sisters also, right? So it's not only the male and female; it is male, female, as well as the transgenders. So all of these 3 have to be equally treated, which in a practical world, it doesn't happen, right? Let's agree to it. You don't have to nod your head in agreement, but in the bottom of your heart, you know that it truly doesn't happen. And over a period of time, we need to change this, and we need to bring about no discrimination anywhere. The next significant thing that we see is the wages, right? The wage limit of currently there is a wage limit of 24,000 rupees where the Equal Remuneration Act is applicable. The maximum ceiling is 24,000. So anybody who receives about 24,000 does not have a hold on the Equal Remuneration Act and on the Payment of Wages Act. But now that wage limit is absolutely removed on the Payment of Wages Act, which means even people who earn in lakhs, who earn in crores, can fight for their rights under the Payment of Wages Act. I think that's a very important distinction that has been made in the Code on Wages. We also look at equal wages, right, among all trades. We have the Minimum Wages Act, my friends. The Minimum Wages Act has several different trades, and there is a minimum wage that is specified for each and every trade. You should be aware of that. Now, with the introduction of this Code on Wages bill, all of that is going to get scrapped, and we have only one minimum wage across the country. No trade-wise differentiation. So you will see a foreman as well as an office assistant, both getting the same level of minimum wages, and this I think is a very significant change. And a lot of industries are going to be affected, either positively or negatively. It has to be studied much in detail whether they'll be affected positively or negatively. But I'm sure you can apply these principles to yourself. Typically, if you see all the industries such as BDs and cigarettes and textiles and construction had lower minimum wages than non-traditional industries such as IT, ITES, KPO, BPO, and all of that. But now they are going to become on par. So that's something that we should definitely think of. So why I'm talking about this is going to significantly change your compensation plan, your compensation structure, your cost of the total compensation that you usually plan for a given financial year or for a 3-year period or for a 5-year period. And you should definitely make all of these items very important, a note of all of these items very importantly. Another interesting thing that I have to admit, my friends, I first was not able to understand, because what they say is bonus is based on performance and not on productivity. So this is what the act is going to come out saying that we always believe that with better productivity leads better performance, right? That is what we believe. And but what the act has now taken a position is that no, bonus should not be paid on productivity, but bonus has to be paid on performance. And how you go about, see, productivity is very simple. If you look at a manufacturing based company, you can see the number of pieces, right? That's productivity. If you look at HR support function, the number of tickets that HR personnel is addressing every day is a measure of productivity. The SLA is a measure of productivity, right? So all of these are direct answers. But when it comes to performance, it's not so. Bonus based on performance can be interpreted in many different ways, right? Certain companies can take a stand that it is only financial performance that matters. Certain companies can take a stand that it is the departmental output that matters, and it may not be necessarily linked to the individual. So how are we going to evaluate these? There are so many unanswered questions. Friends, even I don't have an answer, right? So if any of you have, please enlighten the audience in the chat box, and I'm sure Radha here is there, Arun is there, who will help us go through all of your responses as well, as much as possible. So that's also something that we should take the current COVID time to evaluate and to see what changes we have to make. Something which is very important. Now, the next thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about is about this transition to fixed term employment. Now, when I say fixed term, employment, it is not new. I get it, right? So we are all aware of permanent employment, of contract employment, and even we are aware of this fixed term employment. But what has happened, my friends, is there has been a 1,250% increase in fixed term employment from 2012 to 2019. That's about you can see the percentage of increase, right? And that too in just 7 years. It's just a lot of increase. So why is this happening? If you can note, and all of these stories you are already aware. We 10 years, 15 years ago, we were using lathes, and now we have a lot more CNC machines, and lathes are practically very rarely used. We also see that, so that is not only happening in traditional industries, but it is also happening in non-traditional industries. Industries such as information tech itself, right? So software development was what the whole industry was in the beginning of the 2010 decade. But now it has moved from just development to DevOps. It's called as development and operations together. So this transition is going to continue to happen, and we need to make sure that the skills are changing so frequently. Every 3 years, every 5 years, there is a necessity for us to change the skill. Now let me clarify. The change in competency may not be required in this frequency, right? We may not need to change our competency in 3 to 5 years, but we definitely need to reskill in every 3 to 5 years because business models are getting redundant, product life cycles are reducing, and innovation is hitting through the roof. New technologies are coming up, right? And that's not, when I say technology, it is not only relevant to information tech. We have new technologies in every industry that we can talk about. 5 years ago, I knew that the buttons, right? Can you see this button that we had to put 5 years ago? It had to be done by an individual, right? And that was a big business. And now what has happened is there are machines to do that, and what you need is not a laborer, but a skilled laborer who can program into the machine about how the buttons have to be positioned and where he has to exactly keep the needle. So you see, it is not only happening in non-traditional industries, but technology is also changing in a big way in traditional industries as well. We see IoT as one of the big areas where manufacturing is going to have a big impact. We see that drone technology is changing how large scale agriculture is happening, right? So farmers don't only now need to do farming, but they also need to skill themselves in terms of drones, in terms of analysis of critical data points such as temperature, such as humidity levels, soil nutrition, and all of that. So all of this is changing, and it is necessary to start understanding that we had fixed term employment. Okay, let me I don't want to send a wrong signal that fixed term employment is coming. No, that's not what I mean. What I am trying to tell you is we will have more of fixed term employments moving forward, and less of long term permanent employments. We will have more of fixed term employments moving forward, and so and so. Yes, so those were the transactional items, my friends. One thing that I wanted to talk about fixed term employment, which I'm going to do in a minute, is about the implications of tax, the implications of payroll on fixed term employment people. So obviously you will see that your payroll costs will be a little higher in the short term, because typically fixed term employments come somewhere between 3, 5 and 7 years. So this is what the fixed term employment contracts normally are. And there may be a necessity for us to pay them a little more higher, offer them little more higher benefits to attract them to your company or to your organization, and make sure that your compensation is designed in a way that it is attractive. Otherwise we are going to lose out to our competitors. That's a lot more better than having people for 20 years and 25 years and they don't reskill themselves. Then it becomes a big challenge for the companies to retain or to make money out of those kind of employees, right? So that's something that we need to do. Now coming to the I have 4 more minutes, so I'm going to quickly run through these. Coming to the strategic aspects, my friends, rebadging is a big thing that's caught up, right? We have heard about. I don't know if all of you have heard about it. Have you heard about it? Can you use your chat box and let us know? Have you heard about the term rebadging? Radha, can you help us with the responses? Have you heard about the term rebadging?
No. Mostly only one person who said yes. Okay.
So if you say no, then I can give you a quick explanation of what rebadging is. It's mostly no, is it? Okay. So it actually means, my friends, rebadging is moving an employee from one entity to another entity, carrying forward all his retirement benefits, all his employment benefits, right? So the entities could be connected entities, or the entities could be disconnected entities also, right? Recently in 2019, as you can see, there are about 140 large companies. When I say large companies, I'm talking about those who have more than 5,000 employees. 140 companies undertook rebadging for a significant count of their workforce. So these could be, as I told you, connected or disconnected entities. But what is very critical is all of those benefits should carry forward. One example is, let's say gratuity is 5 years and you rebadge the employee from one entity to another because you either want to move the profit center, you want to move the cost center, you want to make sure that the costs are optimal in a given department or in a given entity and all of that, right? You don't want the employee to lose the history of 3 years that he has put in that company, right? The employee is just not going to say, okay, if his 3 years is not going to be counted for his leave encashment, for his gratuity, for his superannuation and all of that. So that is what rebadging is. Rebadging is moving from one entity to another, whether connected or disconnected. carrying forward all of the benefits that he or she was initially promised. Now, rebadging is picking up big time pace, my friends, and I think you should know that there are a lot of advantages that companies are seeing with rebadging. In fact, Kotak Mahindra Bank rebadged about, this is anyway public data source. I'm not sharing anything that is confidential. Kotak Mahindra Bank undertook rebadging for about 7,000 of its workforce, right? And you'd be surprised, in just 9 days. In just 9 days, right? They leveraged a third party to do rebadging, and they brought in experts, and they made sure that all employees got everything that they were promised when they joined. And this is going to rise, my friends, and you need to understand that our compensation policies should have place for this. Recently, I think it is Wipro, if I'm not wrong. Okay, my 40 minutes are up. That's what it says. Just give me 2-3 minutes, right? So, yeah, I was talking about Wipro. So Wipro is one thing that that is so important. Undertook this rebadging experience. I think Wipro or Infosys, I'm not sure, one of these two companies. Just in April, they had a large pool of employees on bench, and they entered into an agreement with another similar company, and they are now sharing, the employees, the resources are being shared. So you have better resource utilization, you have minimal bench, and you are actually sharing those fixed costs. So this is going to come. It has already come. Maybe if it has not come to you, it will definitely come for sure. Right? Now talking about this micro analysis on a macro level. What I mean by micro analysis on a macro level, in fact, you would have seen this even now, is that when the going gets tough, my friends, everybody will start drilling down on costs, right? When the going gets tough, everybody will start drilling down on costs. Now this was the situation only when the going got tough. But now on, that is from financial year 18-19 onwards, this has become an act. In fact, it has become an act in the Companies Act. As you can see, point number 1, board committees have to be formed for certain type of companies with certain, threshold, with certain employee size, with certain listing or non-listing and all of that. Board committees, board of directors need to directly oversee compensation costs. They need to directly monitor benefit costs, and they have to be in proportion to the revenue that the company is generating. This is a big amendment that has come out in the Companies Act. Of course, it has been there for a long time, but now what has happened is earlier it was very vague. Now they have made it very clear, and they have fixed accountability. They have fixed responsibility on the board level. So you will see on a top-down level, right? So micro, that's what we are trying to tell you here. Micro analysis on a macro level. So there will be extraordinary measures that every one of us has to take to either control or monitor costs, payroll costs, right? You either have to control them or monitor them. And when I talk about payroll costs, let's understand that the cost that we pay to our employees are not the only cost. Please remember, the penalties that we pay, the fines that we pay, the staffing costs that we pay, the consulting costs that we pay, the compensation analysis survey costs that we do. Everything is going to be measured with a greater detail. The cost of compliance, the cost of having a labor lawyer, an advocate on retention, all of these add to significant costs, and there are going to be a lot of questions. If not in financial year 2021, they'll definitely ask you in financial year 21-22. Okay, so what you need to do, what you need to be, my friends, is we need to be ready, and it is so very important, right? And this is another strategic item that I want to quickly talk to you about long-term investments in payroll technology. So how, I think about, I think in 1979 or 1980, it was, sometime before I was born, that lot of softwares started coming up in payroll, right? So they promised ease of use and all of that. And over a period of time in 1990s and the 2000s, we had large ERPs, which ruled, like SAP and PeopleSoft and Oracle and all of them. And what is happening now? All those heavy investments that we made as an organization in payroll technology is getting outdated, right? You can see that SAP has actually is moving to SuccessFactors, and the support for legacy SAP or legacy technology or old technology is reducing day by day, and it's just a matter of time when it is going to stop. So long term, see, I'm a payroll outsourcing service provider. I'm not telling it to my benefit, but this is the truth, that companies are now thinking twice with the long-term investments in payroll technology. Typically, what people do is they look at, okay, what is the cost of the software, initial cost of the software, and then they look at, what is the payroll outsourcing cost. But that's not the case. The cost of the software is not the only cost that you pay, right? You have so many other costs. You have the customization cost, you have the upgradation cost. So if you actually look at a 5 or a 7 year horizon, you will have significant payroll technology costs assigned to it. So long-term investments, a lot of companies are not doing. Even if they are doing with a lot of bells and whistles in the contract. So if you are, or if your company is actually going to invest in long-term payroll technology, make sure that you have a long-term contract with your service provider. It could be, it could be anybody, but make sure that you have a long-term contract. Yes, that is what we saw. And these are the two things that this is my last slide. So, and I want your attention here. Gross-based CTC to gross-based compensation structure to a CTC-based compensation structure. I have started speaking about this since 2017. I spoke about it extensively in 2018. 2020, if you are still on a gross-based compensation structure, my friends, you are late to the party. Right, so you definitely have to move into a CTC-based compensation structure. It is good for you. You will be able to retain employees better. Most important is that you give the choice of how people want to be paid, right? What components they want, what benefits they want. All of those choices will be in the hands of the employees, and they need not be a structured approach for everyone, right? Because every individual has different needs. So this is very, very important. If you haven't yet moved from a gross-based compensation to a CTC-based compensation, friends, you are missing out a lot. And the last item is about artificial intelligence in compensation and benefits.
What is gross-based?
Okay, so there's an interesting question about gross-based and CTC-based. So CTC-based compensation means on the offer letter, you tell them what is the total CTC, right? Let's say the CTC is 10 lakhs. You tell that to them, and you will definitely have a certain basic, right? For that particular grade, for that particular years of experience or position, you will have a basic. So let's say the basic is 3 lakhs. So how the remaining 7 lakhs, that is 10 lakhs minus 3 lakhs of basic, how the remaining 7 lakhs is going to be distributed is in the hands of the employee. How much does he want as PF? How much does he want as NPS? How much does he want as superannuation? How much does he want as HRA? Does he want 40%? Does he want 50%? Does he want 30%? It's all up to him. How much does he want as LTA? How much does he want as children's allowance, as uniform allowance, and all of the in between, give the power of splitting that 7 lakhs in the hands of the employees. And in a gross based compensation is exactly the opposite, right? So you tell them that this is how your salary is structured, this is what it is, and then you add the retirals on top of the gross, because that is what forms your CTC. So I think that's so important. You should think about it. See, gross based to CTC based itself is a big seminar or a webinar in itself. So I hope my explanation helped. The second thing, coming back to my second item, is AI and compensation and benefits. Again, we are too late to discuss this in 2020, but there is a significant impact on artificial intelligence across the length and breadth of everything that we touch, right? You do a banking transaction, there is a 76% chance that the banking transaction is overlooked by your AI, by your code, than by a human being, right? Large organizations have already started embracing the benefits of artificial intelligence, and particularly in a lot of aspects of payroll or generally human resources itself. Artificial intelligence is something that can simplify a lot. In fact, I remember, did I speak at NIPM Coimbatore? I spoke at NIPM Coimbatore chapter, I think in 2018, late 2018, early 2019, I'm not sure. But that I spoke about how artificial intelligence is being used in compensation and benefits. And there is so much of, tools that are available. And don't think you have to spend in lakhs, in crores. If you want to test it out, it's all very simple. Just take up a SaaS subscription. That's simple it is. But artificial intelligence is going to stay, and it can significantly reduce your management costs. I know a company which is handling 475 employees. Okay, they're handling 475 employees with just one HR person. Imagine a company has 475 employees and only one HR person, right? And a lot of work is being done by systems, by an AI system. Questions like, what is my deduction? Where is my payslip? When will I receive my Form 16? All these are very redundant questions. Do you really want a human to answer this? No, I don't think so. Humans should actually answer about performance, about gratitude, empathy, about engaging with the employee on a personal basis or on a professional basis. These very, very transactional level questions, my friends, you should let AI embrace it. And a lot of companies that they are in COVID situation are actually doing it. So that's something that you should look at it too. Wonderful. So yeah, this is what it is. I should thank you very much for listening, all of you. And I overshot my time by about 7-8 minutes, but please connect with me on LinkedIn. And as Mr. Raja mentioned that I have 2 channels, but what will be interesting to you is our YouTube channel on HR Matters. You can go to YouTube, you can just search Relativity Management Solutions, our channel will come up. And before I move into question answers, Radha or Naveen, one of them are going to put a link in the chat, and if you want this PPT, and we have certain checklists, right? We have a payroll process control checklist. We have certain goodies for all of you. So if you want that, just fill up that link. It'll ask you for your name and email ID, and if you want it, if you fill it up, we'll be able to send it to you in the next 2-3 days. Yeah. Thank you once again. Back to I think Mr. Raja or my team.
Yeah, thank you, Akash, for the wonderful presentation. We have a lot of questions. Maybe if your team can help, or maybe if you want us to do that, we will also do that. Hey,
no problem. So you guys, yeah, there are a lot of questions. Raja sir, some questions are being answered, but is there certain questions specifically that you want me to take?
Someone was asking about the papers. To discuss more on the papers and what do the PFDS papers.
Yeah. So one of the questions that I think came up was about the pay cuts. Raja sir, would you like to mention some specific questions? I can start with them. No problem.
Okay, Mr. Matthew or Chandru, if you could help me 1 second.
So until they are going to look at questions, may I answer this question that has come up?
Yeah,
about pay cuts? So I think the approach the method in which you are trying to seek a response is in terms of, if there is a pay cut, what happens to the compliance items, right? That's what you're trying to do, right? So there are two ways of how you can actually undertake a pay cut. One is on the payslip; it just shows as a deduction, right? That's how it shows, and this is what a lot of companies normally use, because they don't want to redo the whole of their salary structure and all of that. So it just appears as an additional column as deduction. In that case, in fact, that would be an incorrect method. I don't think you should do that. Please don't have a column. Have a head under deduction saying pay cut or COVID-19 deduction or whatever. That's incorrect. That's not supposed to be done. Yeah. Now coming to the right method, everything will get recalculated for the revised salary. Your PF, your ESI, your income tax, your gratuity, everything will get recalculated for the revised salary. So let's say if the pay cut is for 30%, most of the times they are not going to touch the basic, right? That's what we make sure. We shouldn't touch the basic. If you have space in your special allowances, just use those special allowances and get done with it. So most of your, compliance level items do not change. So that's what I would recommend. I hope I've answered your question. Raja sir, back to you.
Sir, can I ask you the questions from the question box? Dr. Venkatraman C. He asked for any guidelines to take care of gig employees, GIG employees.
Sir, please come again.
Any guidelines to take care of gig employees?
Any guidelines to take care of increase in premium?
No, gig employees, gig. Like Zomato and Swaggy and all there, no?
Yes.
Any guidelines to take care?
Okay. Can the person who asked, is it Dr. Venkatramanan who asked this question?
Yes.
Dr. Venkatramanan, please, can you give me a bit of a context so that my response will be a little more appropriate?
Good evening, Akash.
Good evening, Doctor.
Fantastic presentation, lot of knowledge sharing. Thank you. My question is on the gig workforce, especially on the IT sector. We have a lot of gig workforce.
Gig workforce, I understand. Yes, please go on.
So any guidelines or any precautionary measures we need to take care when we are handling the payroll for the gig workers?
Right. So when it comes to gig workforce, primarily they are very short-term, contracts, usually 3 months, 6 months, or typically within 1 year. And what most of the companies have now started transitioning into, Doctor, is they are moving into a not an employee method, but more of a consultant method. So that's what they are trying to move. But in case they are your employees, fixed term employees or contract employees, I don't think we have to change anything. Just make sure that they are protected in terms of the risk aspects, right? They are people who also have the equal responsibility as we have with other employees. So as much as possible, those risk aspects have to be covered by the employer. But apart from that, nothing significant. Except if you are treating them as a contractor, as a consultant, then you just do a 10% flat deduction under 26Q, in fact, not even 24Q, and move on.
Thank you, Akash. Thanks.
Is that
Prakash, there is a question on PF ESI calculation. Normally, it's a fixed salary per month. If the fixed salary is below 15,000 or 21,000 for ESI and PF, there are payment towards a production incentive or maybe any other incentive payable month on month or in a frequency. Whether that also covered under PF and ESI.
So a great question. In fact, I have to mention that anything that is linked to output or linked to something which may happen or which may not happen, we don't have to cover it whether either in ESI or in PF.
Sure.
Right? So let's say we have a production linked incentive or a production linked bonus. Now, only if the employee is going to produce X number of items, or he achieves a certain sales target, or if there is a certain output in whatever measure, only then that is going to be paid. So there is a certain condition that is definitely going to happen, right? And that is not a part of your gross salary. That is very important. It should not be the part of your gross salary. So in that case, you don't have to cover it under ESI. That is absolutely different, even if you have to pay it on a month-on-month basis.
Yes, sir.
And as far as Provident Fund is concerned, the same thing applies. Whatever you are not certain that you will pay will not be covered. But let's say for example, if the salary itself is 18,000 and they have indicated in the offer letter that including the production incentive, the salary will be 20,000 or the salary will be 20,500. Then ESI liability arises.
Got it.
Wonderful.
Any other question, Chandru? Otherwise, maybe we can.
You have covered various questions people have asked in your presentation itself. So
I think most of the questions have been answered by
my team. Yeah.
Yeah, correct.
I wish they are super efficient. Just that during these webinars they are super efficient. During normal working hours they are efficient. with due respect to all.
Hello.
Someone was asking about the
Any other questions?
I think there was one question about work from home.
how reduction in salary for work from home is being addressed.
How?
Reduction in salary for work from home is being addressed.
So how reduction in salary for work from home is being addressed? I think a part of this question I had already answered. That see, I really cannot give you a number, right? Different companies have got affected in a different manner, and different companies are responding to COVID differently, right? So there is no blanket number that companies, I mean that we see as a trend. 5%, 10%, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50. That's not the case. It completely depends on the company's ability to continue paying their employees, the company's ability to get work done even when the employees are at work from home. Certain industries, that's definitely not possible. So that there is going to be a significant pay cut there. It is more of a what we have seen is there is significant loss of employment. That is for sure. In certain sectors such as constructions, such as textiles, massive loss of employment has happened. But in most of the forward-looking industries, for example, manufacturing, ITES, supporting industries, there is not significant loss of employment, but there is, I will use this term called furloughing, right? So for a temporary period, maybe for few weeks or few months, a leave of absence is granted to the employee, right? So during that kind of a leave of absence, companies don't usually pay. So that's on the percentage side. Coming to how it is handled on compliance, I told you, it is a bad idea to put it on deduction and just bring it as one of the deduction items on your payslip. That's not the way to do at all. what we should do is we should reduce the earnings itself. That's the right way. I know a lot of companies, I have had HRs fight with me saying that, boss, if we are going to reduce their earnings, then it is going to reflect appropriately on Form 16 and all of that. But unfortunately, that's the way to go. You have to reduce your earnings so that your provident fund, your ESI, or any regulatory and compliance items are appropriately addressed.
There is another question. How to remove a component from existing CTC structure without affecting the overall CTC?
How to, so this is a interesting question. How to remove a component from
existing CTC structure,
okay,
without affecting the overall CTC?
Without affecting the overall CTC. So how to remove a component without affecting the overall CTC is the question. Now, typically what happens is, certain components have a larger impact, right? Let's say, for example, basic. Basic has an impact on your gratuity. Basic has an impact on your retirals. Basic has impact on so many other things. The next thing, if you see, you have HRA. Basic also has an impact on HRA. But there are a lot of other components which are disconnected, right? It won't impact anywhere else. Let's say, for example, we saw in one of the previous slides, there is city compensatory allowance. Now, let's say, for example, you have a city compensatory allowance, 5,000 rupees, and after this awareness session beautifully conducted by NIPM, you are going to decide to remove the city compensatory allowance. So where are we going to move that 5,000? Since this 5,000 has no impact on basic, has no impact anywhere, you can just move it to the special allowance. Borrow it from your city compensatory allowance, make it zero, move it to special allowance. The impact is the same. No income tax impact, no nothing.
You want to remove leave encashment and bonus.
Leave encashment and bonus. Okay. So you want to remove leave encashment and bonus from CTC structure. Now that's quite a deep question that you have asked, because leave encashment is something that you have promised while the employee has joined, right? Or it is there in your HR policy. Are you doubly sure that you want to remove it? If you want to do so, maybe you may have to do a one-time settlement. But there is no direct answer to your question. Why don't you connect with me separately, and then maybe I will ask you a few more questions, and then we can answer. My email ID is avm@relativity.co.in. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. My name is Akash Mahagaukar on LinkedIn, so you can look me up.
Hello, Mr. Akash sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir, Akash sir, Mr. Thanks for your invaluable time. It has given a good information to all the employees. This is Rajendran from Hosur.
Please.
Yeah, then after Mr. Raja also gave the good opportunity to share all the details. This training program. All the employees are very happy. There's so many questions and answers. So many things you keep in mind. All the answers are you all so many times. So are given the answer. This all are help to all others.
Oh, thank you. I will convey it. They are all listening. So thanks to Radha, thanks to Naveen, Arun, and Preeti, who are all trying to answer the questions.
Yes. This is most of the questions definitely will give the answer. Thanks to NIPM Chennai chapter, Raja.
Yes, I think they deserve a big.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thanks, Rajendran. Any other questions so that we can take?
Akash, Satish here.
Yes, Mr. Satish, how are you doing?
Good, Akash. So, can you give me some lights on the AI vendors in supporting the HR currently available in the market?
You want to know AI vendors who are supporting?
Yes.
Mr. Satish, I'm going to add your name to the list that we are going to send. I will include one slide which has the different vendors and what they offer. We are not selling any of them just for everyone else. We're just trying to educate you of what options are available. We'll add one slide in that, Mr. Satish.
Thank you, Akash. Nice day.
Thank you. And before we close, I want to have my sincere thanks to Dr. Venkat Ramanan, Dr. Mr. Raja, as well as a very close friend of mine, for helping me do this presentation. I spoke to Dr. Venkat Ramanan today and got some inputs, and many thanks to all of them.
Thank you, Mr. Akash. Actually, it is a very wonderful presentation, very contented and elaborative. I think you have gone beyond that, whatever the 8 changes. More than that, you also explained about what is relevant for this HR forum and HR people, not only for the current scenario, but for the future also. So maybe the lack of time, you are not able to touch upon few points we could able to understand. I think our people, based on the necessity and the requirement, they will reach you. I'll also request people to use his experts and services Relativity can provide to them, provide to you, and we can benefit out of it. So once again, I thank you, Akash, and your team for your time and the preparation, the presentation you have made. And also thank all my HR folk who have participated in this webinar and take useful information from this. Thanks once again. Thank you all, and a very pleasant good night to you all.
Thank you. Thank you once again. Thank you, everyone. And we look forward to meeting you again.
Thank you, Akash, and all the